Join Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio, the host of Only the Best for You. Be a change maker and unlock the secret to your best life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast, Only the Best for You, here on Global Voice Radio. My name is Carol Davies of the Passion Motivator Coaching Company. I am so pleased each week to share with you the best information and speakers about how you can be the best you can be, how to be a change maker to make the world and yourself the best you can be. Today, I am reporting to you on a topic that has long intrigued me. How do you deal with your fear monster? You've probably already heard the quotation from Franklin D Roosevelt that said, "The only thing we have is to fear is fear itself." Psychologists say that fear is a useful emotion, a warning system, and sometimes a prompt pushing us past our limits. While fear can play tricks with your memory and your perception of reality, it also affects your body. Fear can weaken the creation of long-term memories and damage the hippocampus, short-circuiting the response paths and causing constant feelings of anxiety. Fear is a negative thought that is provoked when an incoming threat is perceived by the body. The response is different for each person and every situation, but it originates in the mind and the effects show on the body. My talk today looks deeper into how we can find out how the human body responds to fear and how we can manage this. How does it affect the body? The general perception is heart palpitation, unexplained sweating, clenching of the fist and teeth, change in eye movements and face expressions, and a numbed thought process. These effects are observed by all of us when we sense a dangerous stimuli. It is one of the negative emotions and is described as a survival mechanism used by the body when it perceives threat. When the mind senses dangerous stimuli, the negative feeling of fear is provoked in the mind. The feeling you experience when someone screams loudly in your ears, or when exams approach, for example, is altogether different from the above symptoms. You would definitely experience negativity that will show some effects on the body. Also, I'd like to mention that there is a difference between fear and phobias. And the latter, being phobia, is excessive and unrealistic fear of something. So what are the consequences of fear on the body? We all fear something or the other. Even if you think you are unafraid, a sudden provocation from a friend or a sudden appearance of a ghost or a false ghost in the night will scare the hell out of you. According to studies, fear of spiders, cockroaches, height, water, enclosed spaces, tunnels, public speaking, and terrorism are some of the most common ones among the general community. Well, there was a very interesting called Little Albert experiment of John B. Watson, and it revealed that fears can be conditioned into a person's mind through exposing him or her to the repeated events. It is also provoked when the person sees dangerous consequences of an event on others and knows that he or she has to go through a similar experience. Bad events of the past condition the mind of the person to be scared of a particular thing or event. For example, if a person had closely survived a fall from a tall building and was hurt badly, he will be scared of height in the future. Now, this, of course, is a very extreme example. Some of us have innate fear of certain things. For example, my mother was very afraid of cats. We never understood why. And then she told us one time when we were a bit older that her mother had a very strong fear of cats and didn't allow them in the house. So my mother had acquired that fear without knowing quite why from her mother. So the brain is the controlling structure of human existence. We have the amygdala located in the temporal lobes of the brain, and it is the key brain element that controls the processing of the negative emotions. Rapid changes are observed in this brain structure when the body is exposed to the stimuli it fears. There are also other brain structures that show response when exposed to fear. The response shown by the body is controlled by another structure called the autonomic nervous system. These changes in the amygdala and the other brain structures are reciprocated by the body through these common signs: goosebumps, increased heart rate, sweating, elevated blood pressure, insomnia, difficulty in digestion, increase in the frequency of urination, and others are among the visible effects on the body. Constant fear and living under stress also affects the mind negatively, giving invitation to a whole lot of distresses and even disease. It is one of the negative emotions that is in the mind, and it is easy to beat. Fear is natural to humans, but let it not affect your mind, as it is nothing but the body's natural response to stimuli. It can be quite difficult to cope with extreme cases of fear, those which can be classed as phobias. But even overcoming phobias is not an impossible thing. Conditioning the mind, meditation, and counseling are some of the best ways to overcome fear and phobia of every kind. Also, lately of interest is the method called tapping, or the emotional freedom technique, which is one that I use with my clients quite a bit. Now, your body is a resource of untapped potential. Your mind has the ability to stop you or propel you forward. So where is your mindset? Are you going forward or are you going backward? People don't want to acknowledge fear. Your fear will keep you stuck. Making excuses, procrastinating, and putting off uncomfortable things is easy to do. Instead of speaking about your fears, what about if you spoke to your fears? Speaking back to that fearful voice that brings you one step closer to taking back your power. How would you be different if you developed a positive mindset? Now, we can see 3 innate fears in infants, including sudden motion, loud or abrupt noises, and sudden approach. Now, as you get older, these automatic fears diminish. So, what did they get replaced with? Avoidance, many times, is a learned response to a specific event that occurred earlier in your life. Developing fear is a way of protecting yourself and staying safe. It works and it has purpose. Some fears are fluid. They come and they go. Others remain. Although fears have purpose, many times they are not based on logic. When you continue to have a fear, then you begin to take actions to avoid it being triggered. Avoidance keeps you from moving forward. It actually keeps you focused on the very thing you're now trying to avoid. You spend a lot of time doing things because you don't want to be triggered by fear. This is a negative mindset. The actions you take are based upon avoidance. You do things to avoid having something possibly happen to you. This will keep your subconscious tuned into your fear, although you feel like you are making every effort to avoid that feeling. The avoidance attracts more negativity. The key is making the choice to release the fear and what you have been resisting. Once you can do that, you will increase the ability to be drawn toward your goal. You will feel lighter and empowered. Choose to take action because you know that you will be better. Think of this. If you had one fear that you would want to release, what would it be? Now, for me, it would be procrastination. Because I know if I put things off for longer and longer, I get such a sense of doom and heaviness hanging over me that by the time I get something done, I wish I had done it earlier. I'm working on that personally, but every so often that little demon pops up and I go, well, got to try a little better the next time. But if you do have a fear and you're trying to get rid of it and it pops up and you get taken back a bit, just be kind to yourself and say, well, that wasn't the best this time maybe, but life goes on and I'm going to do better the next time. So what have you found to be the most valuable lesson when you have faced your fears? Excuse me. Are you currently being held back and feeling enslaved by your fears? I have found when I do face my fears, as I mentioned about procrastination, that is when the biggest breakthroughs occur. My confidence grows and more opportunities arise. I love hearing others' stories and how they faced their fears head on and took action. When I hear these stories, I often think, did anything magical come from that? What was the result? And sometimes it's nice to know, from friends or family, what did happen in these cases, because we can all learn from each other. So I call this facing the fear monster. That thing that you think sometimes, when you were a small child and when you went to bed, some of us thought there was something hiding under the bed or maybe in the closet in the dark. And I remember when I was very, very young, I was afraid to go to bed for a while because I thought something was in the closet. And I insisted that my dad let me leave the light on and I just pull the covers over my head. Well, he didn't like that behavior after a while. So what he did was he would every night, we'd look in the closet together and I would be reassured there's nothing there. I'd see it. I could lay down then. And then he would leave the bedroom door open and let the light from the hallway come in. And I was able to fall asleep that way. It was changing the way he reacted to me by saying, oh, there's nothing there. Because to me, it was real. And it did seem like it was there. But by working with him, I've made my way through that fear. And I'm very glad I did because I do remember that now. And it was a very easy adjustment on his part to work with me not to feel alone, and to see, yes, by doing that, I can get through fear. It was only many years later that I remembered this, and I wish I'd remembered it before, because sometimes when you do have a fear, it's good to tell somebody about it. And maybe you'll get some good advice or help to, avert a situation. So I just like you to think about there are ways that you can do different actions and that, and you don't have to always feel so afraid. So being informed and well organized with a clear focus, you can devise a plan and you can have absolute confidence in yourself that something positive will come out of it. You may be feeling isolated, sad that the business that is your passion is not a big a success as you want it to be. This can be a recipe for depression, stress, and demotivation, which are three things that are deadly to an entrepreneur. By taking small steps, this can help us grow. Taking hold of your fears step by step will lead to big changes and allow you to face your fears more easily. In order to fully enjoy life, you must renounce your fear and anxiety. And I know, having spent a good portion of time being terribly afraid, for example, not being perfect, afraid of what others might think, afraid of failing, afraid someone I loved would leave me if I didn't do my life right according to them, afraid of really being happy, afraid of being myself. I spent a long time in my life having those kinds of fears. They're sort of vague, but they're there. We have the famous Lama Rinpoche. He talks about how we all have a soft spot and that fear-like responses such as worry or resentment occur because we're trying to cover up that soft spot. Most of us tend to hurry past pain, but this hurrying causes more tension instead of healing. If we spend more time with what we call fear and what we fear to look at, we can look into that pain and release some of the tension. You see, when we experience our hearts as more open, we eliminate the power that fear has over us. In the past, I learned a mantra that I repeat to myself frequently. I say, I am free. I am not humiliated by guilt or worry. I say this to myself several times when I find myself feeling afraid, because I know that if I ignore the fear and stay stuck, then I'm not living my life the way I need to. So we need to notice today how we are using our lives, facing them as they are and learning how to stop avoiding ourselves and instead be ourselves. This may be the most courageous act that we can possibly accept. And as the famous poet Rumi writes, today is like every other day. We wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to study and begin reading. Take down the dulcimer. Let the beauty we love be what we do. So, in other words, love yourself, love your day, love your life. We also need to do some self-work on ourselves. I challenge you to think about a situation in your life that you keep saying you're going to face, but get so bogged down with the result that you can't even get started. Then commit to taking one small beginning step in facing this situation. You will see yourself achieve your intention by dedicating yourself to the small inches of progress that you make. I have 4 tips for facing our fears. As I've said, fear is a garden variety human emotion. There is much in this world that can make us afraid. The question is, how do we face our fears rather than let them determine the course of our lives in unhealthy ways? Here are 4 tips that have helped me. The first one is explore the source of your fear. Why are you afraid? Is it because of some past emotional wound or childhood experience? One of the best ways to discover what it is that makes us afraid of something in particular is to get in touch with our feelings or associations related to the thing that is causing us fear. So, for example, as a teenager and young adult, I was terrified of public speaking. So much so that I would do almost anything to avoid the experience. There'd been a couple times when I was younger when I had frozen in front of the class, or my voice had wavered when I had to make a presentation in class, or, just be part of a group occasionally. And those experiences traumatized me to make me feel very uncomfortable on future occasions. Whenever I got up in front of people, that little girl would be lurking somewhere in the recesses of my subconscious, telling me I was in her same shoes. With time and more experience, my grown-up self was able to tell that little girl she didn't have to be afraid anymore. You know what I did? I joined Toastmasters. This was a group, and it still is a very, very good group, where you can learn to do public speaking at your own pace and in the presence and support of a group. I went to that for a good couple of years, and I was able to turn around my fear of public speaking with the result now that I can, speak in front of people. I can make a presentation from a stage. I can do training and teaching, which I love to do. If I hadn't taken that action, I possibly and probably would be still afraid of speaking and putting myself out in public. And these days, when we have to communicate, it's so important. I mean, just think, nowadays we have telephone calls visually by the telephone. We have Skype. We have visits with each other on Facebook. And can you imagine if you didn't like to speak in front of somebody? What would you do with that? So you may have some really good reasons to address your fear if you don't like speaking in public or being watched. There's always something you can do. So another thing I suggest to people is to be brave. Visualize a time when you did something that others would call brave. What did you do? Why was it brave? How did you feel doing it? Did you sense a spiritual help in those circumstances? If so, how? Chances are you felt alive, really alive. When I'm afraid, I remember a couple of times when I did something that others would call brave. For me, it was riding a small, what they call a Swiss post bus, which is a rural bus on the twisting mountain roads in the Swiss Alps. And another time, it was walking alone in downtown Bogota, Colombia, a very dangerous city. These things terrified me, but they also introduced me to the thrill of being really alive. I walked through my fear and nothing happened. It was because I was brave. Every one of us has done something brave. I don't care who you are or what your circumstances are. Take note of that time or series of things and recall it as vividly as you can. The times when I was most afraid in many ways have been some of the most memorable, rewarding times of my life. The third piece of advice I have, do the things you're most afraid of. I think somebody said this once, but I can't quite remember who it was. Fear can be an outlet for making a serendipitous discovery about the untapped potential in you. The very thing that most terrifies you may turn out to be something you're actually good at doing. Or it may be an essential stepping stone in our development as human beings. One thing that scared me very, very much was the death of my parents. I used to think about that a lot in the final years when they were with me, because they were a strong, formative, and supportive influence. It was very hard for me to see them pass on. It meant that I had to face my own mortality, and they aren't here anymore to help advise me. Part of my family structure has gone forever, and I'm still making a way to find how that can be got past. I've had to face that fear, feel the sadness, and yet I have coped. I now have two loving angels up in heaven who watch over me now. I'd like to end by mentioning one of the most renowned authors on the subject of fear. Her name is Susan Jeffers. She wrote the classic textbook, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. She discusses the crippling effects of fear in her personal life and explains how she formulated a course of action for conquering it. Her answers are simple. Her course of action is difficult only because it requires courage. She explains how fear is based on the uncertainty of change and the lack of positive self-image. She avoids psychological lingo and includes many case studies about careers and changes in personal life, both of which are beginning to cause anxiety. Her message is reassuring. Choices are not opportunities to make mistakes, but valid paths to growth, whichever path we take. She addresses the fundamental causes of fear, the belief that I can't handle this. Her book, Feel the Fear, is an important book because it is almost what I would call required reading for young people who sometimes are more crippled by insecurity than others. And many do believe that the path to adulthood is fraught with dangers. Fear is undoubtedly a handicap with which they must learn to cope. And that's going to be a topic I explore in a future show. Fear and how young people can devise strategies of how to cope with that. Susan Jeffers says that first, it is important to understand that everyone is afraid, and it is normal. And secondly, acknowledging fear makes you feel more relaxed. She says that fear can be broken down into three levels. The first one is the surface story. It can be subdivided into those that happen and those that require action. Here are some examples of level 1 fears, those that happen. They're aging, becoming disabled, retirement, being alone, children leaving home, natural disasters, loss of financial security, dying, change, war, illness, losing a loved one, accidents. Then we have level 2 fears. Those are ones requiring action. Some examples are going back to school or learning new things, making decisions, changing careers, making friends, ending or beginning a friendship, going to a doctor, asserting oneself, losing weight, being interviewed, driving, public speaking, making a mistake, or intimacy. The level 2 fears can also involve ego, and these have to do with inner state of mind rather than external situations. They reflect your sense of self and your ability to handle this world. Among these are rejection, being conned, success, helplessness, failure, disapproval, being vulnerable, loss of self-image. And then she says there are level 3 fears, and this regards the ability to handle things. If you knew how to handle anything that came your way, then there won't be any fear. All you have to do is diminish your fear, is to develop more trust in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. At the moment, we have very less trust in our own or our loved ones' abilities. We are overprotective. And rather than finding out why we don't have trust, just say, whatever happens to me, given any situation, I can handle it. And Susan Jeffers said that there were 5 fear truths. So fear truth number 1 is the fear will never go away as long as you continue to grow. Every time you step into the unknown, you experience fear. There is no point in saying, when I am no longer afraid, then I will do it. You'll be waiting a long time for that. The fear is part of the package. Fear truth number 2. The only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. When you do it often enough, you will no longer be afraid in that particular situation. You will have faced the unknown and you will have handled it. Then new challenges await you, which certainly will add to the excitement of living. And her fear truth number 3, the only way to feel better about yourself is to go out and do it. With each little step you take into unknown territory, a pattern of strength develops. You begin feeling stronger and stronger and stronger. Fear truth number 4. Not only are you afraid when facing the unknown, so is everybody else. This should be a relief. You're not the only one out there feeling fear. Everyone feels fear, especially when taking a step into the unknown. Yes, all those people who have succeeded in doing what they have wanted to do in life have felt the fear, and they did it anyways. So can you. And here's fear truth number 5. Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the bigger underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. This is the one truth that some people have difficulty understanding. When you push through the fear, you will feel such a sense of relief as your feeling of being a victim and helpless subsides. You will wonder why you did not take action sooner. You will become more and more aware that you could truly handle anything that life hands you. So today we've been looking at different aspects of fear, what it does to our life and bodies, how it holds us back, and some tips on what you can do about it. So I truly hope that you'll find some great takeaways from my musings today. And if you want further information or want to talk about more ideas with me, contact me through my website, www.thepassionmotivator.com, or by email at coachcaroldavies@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Remember, you can change your life at any time and be the success you want to be. I look forward to connecting with you again next week. Bye now.
Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern for Only the Best for You with Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio.